Good evening. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar by Vluchtelingenwerk, the Dutch Council of Refugees, on the temporary protection order for third country nationals who have fled from the Ukraine to the Netherlands. Again, thank you all for attending. My colleague Sonia is going to take you through the details of the end of the freeze, of the end of the freeze on the end of the temporary protection order for the third country nationals. Before I give the floor to her, I want to take you through the structure of this webinar. First of all, this webinar is going to be recorded in English, Arabic, and Russian. The original will be in English, so that's me and Sonia, and then it will be simultaneously translated to Arab and Russian. So make sure that you select the correct audio for you to listen to, the correct audio channel. If you have any questions during the webinar, you're free to ask those through the Q&A option on Zoom. If you ask those questions in English, then we might be able to deal with those questions during the topic, during the slides in the presentation that's being discussed. If the questions are in Arab or Russian, we're going to have to translate those, and we have some space for those questions halfway through the webinar and at the end of the webinar. There's about an hour of content for the presentation, and then half an hour, so split into 2 times 15 minutes for your questions. Hopefully that's enough. I'm seeing a few participants are raising their hands. We're not going to be able to give you the floor to ask your question orally. It's going to have to be through the question and answer option from Zoom. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your attention. And I'm going to hand the floor to my colleague Sonia, who is going to take you through the presentation.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Sonia. First, yes, just a check. Do you see my first slide? Then I know the sharing of my screen is working. Please, maybe an interpreter or David, could you reply if you see my slide?
Yes, we see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, just checking. Otherwise, I was talking and you were thinking, what is he talking about? This is a webinar especially for non-Ukrainians with a temporary Ukrainian resident permit and who were within a situation that in March 2024, the temporary protection ended, and then, well, the freeze started, and it will end on September 4th, 2025. I hope now is, sorry, yes, content. First part, we're going to talk a little bit is who are we and what are we for an organization, because I think it's always important for you to know who you're talking to. I want to do a bit of a summary about the temporary protection and the end of the freeze, so everybody's on the same page. Then I want to explain the different situations because of the end of the freeze and different procedures, we have multiple situations where people maybe are in. Then there's a room for questions. And in part 2, we do more about what to do after the September 4th. And the possibilities you have. There is some more information or organization who you can go to. And there's again rooms for questions. This is about the how this webinar is going to be. First, who are we? We are the Dutch Council of Refugees. Maybe you know us at Vluchtelingenwerk Nederland. Well, maybe because in Holland we talk about it, is if you literally translate it, don't do it, because it sounds like we are a job office that we are not. We are an independent organization to support refugees and asylum seekers from the moment they arrive in the Netherlands until they have found their way to independence, or in your case, also what to do next when the chances to stay in the Netherlands are minimized. As you know, English is not my native language, so excuse me for if I mispronounce stuff, but please forgive me for that. This is now the rules David already explained. If you have questions, please ask them in the Q&A. And also, if you ask them and we were not able to answer them, and we think those are legitimate questions which everybody should know the answer to, we can put them afterwards together with this webinar when we post this online. Or if you have more questions, you can always book an online counsel, and then you do that by go to refugeehelp.com. Because we probably won't be able to answer all questions, and also if the questions are very private and personal, I prefer not to talk about this because of privacy, because a lot of people are going to watch this, and I think privacy is very important. Well, at first, a summary. It started that, the news came that March 4, 24, the temporary protection would end. And then a lot of people start a procedure against that. And not everybody, but a lot of did. And that's why our ministry decided, well, we freeze the ending of the temporary protection because there are a lot of questions, and especially our court, they had questions to the Court of Justice of the European Union, like, is it allowed for the Netherlands to end the temporary protection? And this was an important one because if it was not allowed, and especially only to end the temporary protection for third country nationals, because that was a big issue. And then the Court of Justice of the European Union, they said on December 19th, yes, it is possible, but in some cases, the return decision needs to be renewed. So it came back to our ministry, and they decided they need to think how we're going to handle that. And then the conclusion was that on September 4, 2025, the freeze will end. And after the end of the freeze, people have 20 days notice to leave the Netherlands and the Schengen area if there is no other permit or legal ground to stay in the Netherlands. Well, in this part, we have multiple situations where people are in because of all the different procedures. First, there are people who have a regular permit right now, maybe a work permit, stay with partner, study permit. And for that group, there are their own rules based on that permit. We go into that later on, but first I want to point out all the different situations. Some people, they have had a request for asylum, and that asylum is granted. And that is a bit different than another permit like work or study permit. So that's why I want to talk about that separately. I don't know if people with an asylum permit are right now in this call or watching this webinar, but we think it's very important to know what your rights and your obligations are. Then there is also a group who still has an open request for an asylum permit, which for them are also going to change a lot of things. Then there is a group who had a legal procedure started because of the ending of the temporary protection, or they started a procedure against the return decision. And there's a lot of you did that. And there are still maybe some procedures going on. So that's why we're going to talk about them separately. And also the fifth group, that is people who did, well, nothing is a bit blunt, but there is no open legal procedure, or they did not ask for another kind of permit. So right now, they are also in an other position than the other four. Like, what are your options in this situation? So first, the people with a regular residence permit. And this is when you stay with partner, a work permit, or a study permit. And I want to point out a work permit, in this case, in the Netherlands, we have two kinds of work permits. And those words kind of sometimes is confusing, because you have a work permit based on, and the Dutch word is tewerkstellingsvergunning, a typical Dutch word. I think it's hard to pronounce, but it's kind of, you are allowed to stay in the Netherlands, and with this permit, you also are allowed to work. But the permit itself is only you only be allowed to work. It's not a permit to stay in the Netherlands. It's not a visa. And this permit to stay in the Netherlands without temporary protection, you need a permit combined with a visa, with combined your that you are allowed to stay in the Netherlands. For that group, as I said, you are allowed to be in the Netherlands, so you may remain in the Netherlands based on your permit, as long as you meet conditions with that permit. For example, if you stay with partner, then the moment, for example, you divorce because you were married and then you divorced, this is the base ground of that permit is then missing. So it's important that to realize the grounds of the permit is based on the conditions. Then the rights associated with the temporary protection, that part ends, that part expire, because for example, your right to shelter, your insurance, or your living allowance was based on the temporary protection. So from the 4th of September, you must have your own housing, your own insurance, and you must pay for your own costs. Well, most of you probably have work, but make sure that you have alternative housing. And I understand right now in the Netherlands, that's very hard and difficult. So it's important for you to realize that you have search for that, and also make sure you insure yourself. You must have a health insurance. Those are the three most important parts you have to realize what's happening to you from September 4th. I don't know if the translators need more time as I talk, so and also maybe if you have a phone and you can take a picture, sometimes it's handy too, because then you look. Okay, the second group, asylum permit. That's a bit different. It also, of course, the temporary protection freeze ends. But for you, it's important to contact your municipality or your location manager and tell them that you have a permit based on asylum. Because in the Netherlands, you have rules and obligations, but you also have rights, and it's important that everybody knows what your rights are and what your obligations are. For example, which is a big difference than the other group, is that you are still entitled to shelter, because people who have an asylum permit, they have a right for shelter. And normally, when you live in a regular procedure for asylum, you are living in the COA, and from the COA you go to municipality to your first housing, and now you live in home in the municipality shelter, and the municipality has to offer you your first housing, and there is a big waiting list. So we know, so they don't have a house for you tomorrow, but you all probably also already know that. For you, it's also important to know the municipality has to offer you one-time an option for your house, and please don't decline it, because there you have to have good reason when you say no to a house. And for example, it's too far away from your job or too far away from public transportation is not a good reason. So communicate with your municipality about your situation and ask them in a conversation what they can offer and what they can do for you. Also, in addition, you have additional rights and obligations based on your asylum permit. For example, you have to integrate. That is, you have to do that. There are integration courses. You have to learn Dutch, etc. So it's also important to know what those obligations and rights are. So communicate again. Also, you can contact our organization who help you through to understand more about that asylum permit. And the other thing, what I'm going to tell, it's not on this slide, is also your insurance. At this point, you are probably have an insurance by the RMA, which is insurance for asylum seekers. But they expect when you have your own income to make sure you can pay for your own insurance. But this is also talk with your location manager and your municipality. Wait for a moment. And then for the people who have an open request for asylum, it's also a bit different from 4th of September. And that is the biggest difference is you have to move to a COA location, because the COA is the organization who gives shelter to people in an asylum procedure. And this is a bit of a big unknown, which the COA has also the same with the GO shelters. There's a very, very big issue with to have enough COA shelter places. This is a big problem in the Netherlands. So the COA doesn't know right now where you're going to move to. So it is an option that the COA location where you're going to move to is not nearby the place where you live now. So, but it's also, again, important to talk with your location manager and municipality about it. I don't know how the communication between COA and municipalities is going to be. As an organization, we try to find out. So if we know more, we post about it on Refugee Help, because I think it's very important information. But also for you, keep in touch with your location manager, because as soon as they know, they can inform you too. Also, another big thing, different is the people who have asked for asylum more than 6 months ago, you can continue working, because normally within an asylum procedure, you have to wait for 6 months before you can start working. And that moment is, in this case, the moment when you signed your for your temporary protection, you signed a form, which as a name, but that is not important. The moment when you signed that form, your asylum procedure was also activated underneath the temporary protection. So probably the most of you are already longer than already longer than 6 months within the asylum procedure. And the only thing is your employer has to apply for a work permit. And that is not the same work permit as I talked about before. This is the work permit, tewerkstellingsvergunning, is that you live in the Netherlands, we agree, but your employer must have a permission to assign work to you. Inform your employer about that. There is an easy website, so it shouldn't be a very difficult task, but inform them so you can keep your job. And also, there in a COA location, there is a different set of rules. For example, you have to call in weekly and sign in that you are there. It's more difficult, for example, for traveling, especially abroad, because as an asylum seeker within the COA, you cannot not travel abroad. So there are more rules and different rules. So, but as soon as you go to the COA, inform yourself about it, because now you're used in a way of living and how you handle yourself, what you do and what you can't do. And it's important that you don't make mistakes because you're not used to the new rules. Oh, wait, because I don't know how long this translation is in Russian or Arabic. Then there are people with an open procedure, and that is at the moment, the 4th of March 2024. Some people started the procedure against ending the temporary protection or the return decision. And for those people, you have received a written notice to issue a return decision in early June. And this part is important. If you say, well, I have an open procedure, I had a lawyer and we applied against that decision or that for the temporary protection ending in March 2024, and you did not receive a letter, contact your lawyer. Because maybe something went wrong with the mail, I don't know for sure, but you do have a lawyer because otherwise you couldn't start the procedure. So contact that lawyer. Maybe there went something wrong, and then you can contact the IND about it. But this is important. As long as the procedure is still open, then you are covered with a temporary protection. And some of you, because you received that written notice, and some of you applied to that written notice lately. So the procedure, when your procedure is still open, even after September 4th, you're still covered by the temporary protection. And until the court has given you a negative judgment, until then, you have shelter, you have living allowance, and you can work because it's until then you are under the temporary protection. And maybe it is, for example, if you have an answer by the court on September 8th instead of September 4th, then from that day on, that 28 days of returning will start. And if you have a positive judgment, you are under the temporary protection, you can stay in shelter. Well, I said that already. You can stay in the shelter until the procedure is completed, and depending on the outcome, if it's a positive outcome, you stay on the temporary protection, and it's a negative outcome, then your 28 days return decision start. And within that return decision, it's also, you can think about the next steps. You can work, and you see, and if you have no work, you receive a living allowance. I think this is the first part, but I have to be sure. Oh, no, not. This is for the people who have no open procedure, and you received an information letter from the IND, and that was not a notice because all the return decision and the decision that temporary protection ends, which was sent to you in the period of March 4, it's still valid. So you didn't receive a new decision or new notice, you just received an information letter. And in your case, you have 28 days, which says on the letter, to leave the Netherlands. And I will say this is also important for those who leave, for example, by car, that 28 days to leave the Netherlands, it's for the Schengen area. So it's also for the EU member states, plus Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. So, for example, if you leave by car, then you have to realize that please don't stay 28 days in the Netherlands, because otherwise you can have problems at the border, for example, in another country. And after the 28 days, then the IND, the departure periods end, and you have a CIS registration. And that's why I said it's important to realize that if you leave by car, because you can have troubles at the borders, for example, in another country, when when they check you out and they see you have a CIS registration. So that's why I say this is important, that you realize it's not only leaving the Netherlands, but it's leaving the complete Schengen area. And during those 28 days, you are entitled for shelter in Go, but you're not allowed to work anymore. And you also do not have insurance, so no RMO or RMA. And you have, there is a CAK, there is for emergencies, there is need. So, for example, you have an accident and you have to go to a doctor, you can go to a doctor, but you have no insurance anymore for the regular checkups. It's only for emergencies. This is the part one for questions. So I go to David if there are a lot of questions in the Q&A.
Yes. Well, thank you, Sanja, for the first part and the very clear explanation of a complicated subject. There's a lot of questions coming in, but a lot of them will be answered in the second part or relate more to the second part than the first part. So I am checking those questions. We are going to get back to those, but if you don't hear your question right now, then don't fret about that. Also, like I said, it's a complicated subject. As I mentioned at the start, this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be put online on Refugee Help. So you can view it back there, pause it on the slides that contain the information that's relevant for you, and take your time to take in all of that information if it's a bit too much right now. There is one question. Let me scroll to the right one, which is relevant for now. Sonja, you mentioned that after the 28 days in which people need to leave the Schengen area, they will be put in the SIS system by the IND. There's a question here from a participant. Why is the IND automatically putting our names on SIS system in the new return decision without giving us the opportunity to leave the country voluntarily? It might be a misunderstanding, or are there cases in which people might already be in the SIS system?
Well, this is a good question, because this is, for me, sometimes the complication of an SIS system is huge. So that's why I think it's a good question. In that 28 days, you are this is the leaving period, and you are allowed to be in the Schengen area during that 28 days. So during that 28 days, you should not be, I'd say it like that, not be pop up or in the Schengen system, because you are allowed to be here. For example, as I say, you are allowed to have shelter, and that's not possible if you are in a system, the SES system. So, but after 28 days, then the CIS registration is activated. So from that moment on, other countries can also, your Schengen countries can see your name, for example, and you cross a border and somebody is checking your papers, they can see this person is not allowed to be here. And that's why I mentioned use those 28 days to leave the Schengen area. If you leave the Schengen area, for example, in day 25, then your name should not pop up in a system if you cross a border. And if you have problems with that, you can contact us, because then we can talk, why is this happening? We can ask the questions. But also, because I am worried about this, that SIS is also something that's on my mind. But what's happening, for example, if you leave willingly on day 24, for example, you take your car and you start driving. It's clever to mention that to DTNV. That's the part of the IND. It's part of the ministry which support leaving the Netherlands, and make sure you mention that, sign up, also because maybe they can help you in your country of origin to start over again. But also, if you have problems at the border, but you officially signed out of the Netherlands and you mention at DTFV that you have left, it's easier to make sure that SIS registration is undone. The websites and etc. and organization I mentioned, they are in this slide also, but we make sure that when the video it's come up on the website, all those organizations, they will be mentioned separately too, because I understand it's hard to find which organization I'm talking about right now.
All right, thank you. One more question that is relevant right now. Are there exceptions on the end of the freeze of the ending of the temporary protection? For example, for sick people, children going to school here, family reunification, or people who have a Ukrainian partner.
Well, it's not about, in this case, some things are not about the exception of the freeze, because the freeze ends on 4th of September unless there is a procedure open. But for example, if you have a partner who is in the temporary protection, then it's important to or contact your lawyer if your partnership or your relationship is a valid reason to have a temporary protection based on your partner. And there are rules on it because the relationship should have been started in Ukraine, so it's not valid for a relationship who started in the Netherlands. So it's not about broadening the period of time of the freeze, but more about what legal reasons you have because what reasons are valid to have a permit in the Netherlands, and it's based on medical reason maybe, or it's based on study, or it's based on temporary protection based on your partner, but there's all rules and regulations for that. So they won't say, or in your case, your situation is like this. In your case, we expand the freeze for a month, or we expand the freeze for 3 years. They don't do that. It's all being in the Netherlands. You always have to have a legal ground, with the legal ground is equal to everybody. And it's not humanitarian. You can say, well, that does not feel fair to me because I have for example, I am married a week ago with a partner I met a year ago. Then they say, then you have to apply for a permit based on staying with your partner, and you have to, and there are rules and regulation for that permit too. Do you understand what I mean? In my head, it's clear, but I don't know if I'm clear to you.
Well, if it's not clear, then people can ask in the Q&A, which one person already did during the explanation of the SIS registration. So we're going to do that question first, and then people have another question about the exceptions, then by all means ask them. What would happen if someone can provide a visa to another Schengen country after the 4th of September, but within those 28 days? Will this stop the IND from activating the SIS registration?
Yeah, well, it's kind of in this case, especially because it's not you are not forbidden to go back to the Schengen area. They say it's because you have two kind of reasons why the INDs say you have to leave the Schengen area. One is a return decision, which is now, and they say you have to return to your country, but you're welcome again when you have official papers. So in this case, when you have official papers, for example, to France, then you are allowed to travel to France because you're not forbidden to go in Europe, but they say you are welcome when you have legal papers. Sometimes people, when you stay, for example, when you stay illegal after those 28 days, then they can decide, well, you're probably a person who do not want to leave. And then they can give you a decision that you are not for a year or for a few years allowed to be here. So there are two different kind of reasons why you have to leave Europe. So in this case, they say you have to travel out, but if you can arrange official documents to go to France, you are welcome to be in France.
Thank you, Sonia. And then one more question about the exceptions, or a question for clarification. The partner of someone who has the Ukrainian nationality has the right. Sorry, I'm trying to decipher the question here and simultaneously translate it to English. The partner of someone who has the Ukrainian nationality has the right to stay in the Netherlands. You were saying, if that was a relationship that started in Ukraine.
Well, I don't know the details. So for me, it's hard to say yes or no, because otherwise I give you maybe false hope. But if you have the feeling that in your case, there is a chance that you could have temporary protection based on the fact that your partner is within temporary protection, go contact a lawyer to be sure. Because I don't know your personal situation, so I don't want to give you false hope and say, yeah, that's possible. But when I see the case and I look at all the details, was that okay? Well, no, in this case, this is not. So I cannot bluntly say yes or no to that one.
Yeah. All right. Most of the other questions are with regards to the steps that people can take in different situations, which you're gonna, well, most of those you'll address in the second half of the presentation. So I'm gonna leave those questions till after that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I go on. What to do next? First, there are kind of three general, okay, there are also exceptions to those three options, but in general, you can return to your country of origin or maybe another country where you have a permit to be, or you can go to Ukraine, but this is we do not recommend that, but I go into that later on. You can maybe apply for a residence permit, work study, or partner. And my screen does something. Is my screen black for you or not? Because
yes, your screen has turned black.
Yeah, okay, wait, I stop sharing and I share again because my screen turned black too. One moment, I
can now see your whole screen rather than just the presentation.
Okay, well, this is already you see something, which that makes me happy. Even kijken. Yes, do you see my screen again? Okay, technique. You see, I'm so. This is not my copy, but it's working. Okay, I was here. You can apply for asylum if you have a well-founded fear of persecution, and this is important because the IND is really going to check if it's a grounded fear, and we go into that later on. And realize if you do nothing, if you just say wait, you become illegal, which is also very difficult in the Netherlands. So I will get into that later on too. First, if you in the red triangles or no, there's no squares. Sorry, there are very important organizations for you. We put them in the with the video if we post it online. But for those who want to know them already, write them down. But if you want to return to your country of origin or to Ukraine or to another country, those are a few things you have to keep in mind. First, if you want to return to Ukraine, because I hear a lot of people talk about that. And first, you still have to have a valid permit to be in Ukraine. So if you had a temporary permit and it's already ended, you will be illegal. It's not probably, you will be illegal in Ukraine. Realize that. But also as an organization, because Ukraine is still at war, there are still bombs and drones and everything. So we strongly advise against that because it's war and your safety cannot be guaranteed. Also, the embassy of Ukraine, they say to people with a student visa, they say, well, right now it's not safe to study in Ukraine again, so wait to continue your study. Those are three things you have to keep in mind. If you want to return to your country of origin, and then there are two big organizations you can contact. DTNV, it's Dienst Terugkeer en Vertrek. That's what those letters stands for. And it's the return department of our ministry. And they can help with practical things, but also with financial assistance. Also, there is the EOM, International Organization for Migration. They can also provide assistance, and they have a connection with a lot of partner organizations. And your support it can be advice and information. You get a one-way air ticket to your country of origin. You get some money for basic departure support. And there is a kind of small cash amount for startup and for this first period of time, and also an assistance in the first year after return for reintegration. So, and those partner organizations also can help you with maybe career advice, trainings, etc. So if you are interested in that, and also just to inform yourself to know what the options are, you can both contact IOM and DTNV. Just gather information. That's still your choice because everything is based on free choice. So inform yourself what in your case the best thing is to do. Oh, and this is the one part I almost forgot. Also, if you want to go to another country, you always have to have a valid residence permit. And that doesn't matter which country you and DTNV or IOM cannot help you with permits for other countries. So they can help you with to organize to return to your country of origin, but they cannot give you papers, for example, France or Italy or even the United States. Those things you have to have yourself before they can help. The other thing, apply for a residence permit, and that is study, work, or partner. Also in the square is the website for the IND in English. There is a good information for all the options of residence permit, and then you can fill in your situation, and then you can check if those permits could apply to you. So just check those out. A study visa or a work visa with a residence permit. It's based strict rules and regulation, and also you can see what those are on the website of the IND. But all of them must be submitted together with an educational institute or employer because it is combined. It's not I go to apply for a study visa and when I have it, I go search around which study I'm going to do. It must be combined. Another important one, and this is also a really important one, if you submit, because if you have a chance for a study or a work visa or permit, you have to submit that before September 4, because then there is an MVV exemption, and that means that normally those procedures are based at, for a work visa or a study visa, you apply for them in your country of origin, and then you go to the embassy, and then you get a kind of a permit to travel into the Netherlands, and then you have your permit to stay. But in this case, that would be a bit silly, because otherwise you have to travel back to your country in origin to go to the Dutch embassy, and then you can go to the Netherlands. And if you apply for the study of work visa before September 4, they say, well, you don't have to, we don't need the MVV part. And otherwise, if you apply to that in the 5 or 6 September, then that exception is not an option anymore. And also, again, there are which job, which study qualifies for a worker study visa is also written on the IND website. So that is a very, very important research place. If you have a residence permit to stay with family or partner, there's also, again, strict rules and regulations and how you can apply for this visa. Now, your relationship has to be verifiable, and also it's a certain amount of time. There are some checks which say this kind of relationship is allowed to come over. You must both be 20 years or older. For example, you have to live together and you have to be registered on the same address, because they say you do this as a partner, as a couple. So the IND has to treat you as a couple. And there are income requirements, because they say you have to be able to support each other. I'm checking if I'm happy to see that the interpreters are not raising their hand, because I was not clear with my words. If you apply for asylum, and again, the IND website is important because there are some information about that, but also on refugee help, there's a lot of information for asylum seekers. Because now you probably most of the time looked at the part of people who fled from Ukraine, but you can also change those settings and say, I have a question as a person who wants to apply for asylum. And on the website of Refugee Help, it's in English, Arabic. Most of the countries' languages are available. There's a lot of them, so you can read it in your own language, probably. This is the biggest part. A person has a right to apply for asylum if you are not safe in your home country, because you are personally being persecuted for race or social group, religion, nationality, political opinion, sexual orientation, or the situation in your home country is not sufficiently safe. For example, there is war or large-scale persecution of the army or police, but it's really about safety. And you have to prove, and you must have the grounds to show the IND, like, I am not safe there for that and that reason. The IND will process your application as a new one, as a new and regular application. So your period of time you were in the Netherlands because of the temporary protection does not count. If you apply for a new asylum, an example, you go to Ter Apel, this is the place where you apply for asylum, that is day one. So they won't look at that you are already 3 years in the Netherlands, because that procedure that was combined with temporary protection has ended, and they say, okay, now we're going to start to check and to start with the asylum procedure. And right now, this is the most difficult part. The current waiting period to start the procedure or to go to the procedure is 81 weeks. And it starts when you apply in Ter Apel. Then you have in a couple of weeks, you have your first interview, then your second interview. But even before the IND makes going to start to make a decision, because sometimes it's longer, it's 81 weeks. Well, during that period, you stay in a COA shelter and not in a GO. So you have to move. There are different rights. In this case, and as I said, your weeks start counting completely new again. So for the first 6 months, you are not allowed to work. You have to report weekly to COA, and you are not allowed to leave the Netherlands. Those are the strict rules for asylum seekers in the Netherlands. And they're going to check, for example, if you apply somewhere else in the EU for an asylum, there's something called the Dublin procedure. It's just the name because they signed the procedure in Dublin. But they say the country where you first applied for asylum, that is the country which is responsible for the procedure. So the IND is going to check that too. And for example, if you apply for asylum and they see you were applied for asylum in France before that, then they're going to transfer you to France. But again, also for me, is the first part is the most important. It's based on personal persecution. So they're going to check on that, and you have to prove that you are in danger. Well, and what if you do nothing? And well, I mention it especially because last years, you kind of each time you did nothing, and then there was a freeze, or this happened and that happened. But right now, as we see it as organization, the 4th of September is quite definite. And then the situation is that you become illegal in the Netherlands, and people who are residing illegally in the Netherlands have few to no rights. You have no right to shelter. Even the regular night shelters are no option. You have no living allowance. You have no food bank account assistance. You have no food bank assistant. That means there are the help organization for people who have not enough money for food. If you have food bank assistance, they can help you to get some food in. But there's also not an option. You're not allowed to work. You cannot open a bank account, and you have no health insurance. And there it is. There is that CIS registration again, and that entry ban. Because if you have for example, you come in contact with the police or with some officials, you can get an entry ban, and you have risks taken into a deportation center, which means, for example, you come in contact with the police for some reason, and a deportation is kind of a holding cell or a holding center for you to leave the Netherlands. You have rights for medical assistance care, but only the necessary one. For example, if you are in an accident, and children under 18 are allowed to attend to school. There is more information which can be found on www.basicrights.nl, and there are some other organizations, and you can read more about it on refugee help, living in the Netherlands without a residence permit. If you need more assistance, because this is quite general and maybe a lot of information you already knew, but I can understand that everybody's personal situation is always a bit different. So contact refugeehelp.com, ask for an online consultation, speak with people. just to see what your personal options are, or if you ask about, is this letter about a still open procedure? I'm not sure. Just talk to them because it's important to know what rights you do have in this period of time. And now this is the part for more questions. And I think there's a lot of more of them.
Yes, there were a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to try to group them together a little bit. Like you say, Sonia, every individual situation is different, and we're not going to be able to answer all of those specific questions right now. But if after this webinar you still have questions that pertain to your personal situation, then indeed you can make an appointment through refugee help to get some more assistance in your personal situation. A lot of questions are coming in about the work permit. Maybe you can give a little bit more explanation about that, like what steps do people need to take for the work permit, and especially that salary requirement. People are asking if there are any ways around that, or if those are hard rules.
Well, there, there are hard rules because, but the best thing is to do is, for example, if you have a job, and also realize the work permit is uh, it's a difficult procedure because there are multiple ways for a work permit. There is a way that, for example, if you have a job and your employer was searching for somebody to fill in that job for a few months and nobody applied for the job, and it's a specific information, specific knowledge, then your employer can write that down and they can prove, for example, the vacancy was open for this period of time. I really try to find somebody, and now finally within this third country national person who finally fill in that vacancy, then you can prove this one is needed. And the base of the work, the grounds of the work permit, and this sounds a bit strange as I talk like this, but sometimes I'm sit on the, as we call it in the Holland, devil's advocacy. So sometimes you have to do that. It's about, they say, okay, the persons from foreign countries who fill in our jobs must be needed because otherwise we would be filling the jobs ourselves. And it sounds a bit blunt, but it's easy way of looking at it. So, for example, is a vacancy hard to fill? Then an employer has a chance. Is it knowledge, specific knowledge, IT or medical, etc.? Those are jobs who is easier to get a work permit for. I say easier; it's not granted you get it. So, and that's why you have to talk with your employer because they have to work with you. You have to apply for it. But also those jobs, especially when it's a unique knowledge or a hard to fill vacancy, they already pay more because it's otherwise it's also ask and demand. So when it's hard to find somebody to fill in that vacancy, the employer always offers more money. So that's why also that minimum income is based because otherwise everybody could say it's needed. It sounds a bit blunt, but it's the best way to explain it.
Yeah. Thank you. And is there any opportunity to get a work permit by starting your own business or to get a residency permit through that route?
Well, it's not my specialty. I have to say that. So maybe if you are really interested in doing that, you have to. I advise you to also go to the Kamer van Koophandel, and it's also on the IND website. It's also information about that, and there are probably a lot of requirements before you are able to. So I won't say no, but I'm kind of scared to say yes to that question.
Yeah. Then there's still quite a few questions about the appeal options against ending a temporary protection. People who have not yet started an appeal, do they still have any options to do so?
Well, I go back to one of my first slides because it's easier to explain it with that one, where you see the timeline, and then I'm going to share my screen again. Because I can say because I want to do it with an explanation, the why not explanation, and I think, but I'm now searching for the share button, which I cannot find. Okay, I do it by it. No, because and that's why it's important to understand there was a freeze. It's not right now that the temporary protection ends on September 4. This temporary protection has already ended on March 4, 2024. And after a decision, in this case, a decision that the temporary protection ended, there is always only a certain amount of time you can reply to that, because otherwise you could process endlessly to procedures. Again, if you have questions, I always advise talk to a lawyer. Maybe I'm not a lawyer, so and they have a higher pay grade than me, so maybe they know stuff I don't. So I never say in this case, I always advise talk to a lawyer. Maybe they see something which I don't see, but basically the temporary protection ended on 4 March 2024. And the reply period, and before that time, and for example 2 months or 3 months before that, 2 months before that, for March, you received a letter about the ending and that you could go appeal to that. Then it ended, and then the freeze start. And the freeze start is more like that 28 days leaving period, etc. And that's why they call it a freeze. It's not that they stop the procedure about ending the temporary protection and now start the ending all over again, because the procedure ended on March 4, 2024. And that's why people who didn't apply in that period of time now only received an information letter. And that goes back. Yeah, do you remember we ended the temporary protection last year, and now we remind you of that, and now you have to end this and have to leave the Netherlands. But again, never say never. If there is any lawyer who say I see something, yeah, it's your right to check it out.
Yeah, thank you. A few questions about the return to the country of origin through DTNV. DTNV. You mentioned 5 points there that in which people can get support from the IND, financial and logistically. Do all those 5 points, all those 5 modes of assistance, are they available to every third country national who has to leave?
Well, I wish somebody, and it's not IND, but it's the DTNV. It's a different organization. That's why I understand. You started the question correct, so I think the person who asked that question, that one was correct. It's DTNV, and as I read it, this is the general support that the IND gives you, but everything is all, especially for example, also by the IOM, is based on the country you are going to. I will park that question. I will look at the website for DTNV because I don't want to make false promises. So meanwhile, if you ask the next question, I can search the former one.
Yeah, there was another question about the support uh, for returning. If you can confirm that the €5,000 for a voluntary return is indeed no longer valid.
That's true, because that €5,000 return was valid in that first period of time when there were more uncertainty about the ending of the temporary protection, and the DTNV, now I say it wrong, they had more, they want to motivate people more and give people more support. But now, because of that option, people had multiple times to get that advantage and multiple times to use that option. And now it said, well, you had your options and you have your opportunity to use that, but now it's gone. That is the difference.
Yeah.
And to go back to the last question, I have the website from DTNV, and it says it's again the departure support can include, and for me, it's not sure it is definite. So this is information just to be sure. Call the DTNV. Getting information, it's never going to be a result that put you on a plane already. So you're always free to get your information.
Yes, thank you. Let me just look for the next one. Quite a few questions about study permit as well, and like what the specific steps are for people to obtain a study permit, especially uh, if they've already been admitted to the university in the Netherlands, but uh, under the temporary protection haven't gotten that combined with a study permit yet.
Yeah, well, this is also those signals of people who have trouble with that. Please contact us, because that for me that is also important, because you started your study with the idea that you could end it. Talk with your education, with your counselor with that. Especially universities, they are used for international students, so probably they know a lot about it. And also, I will put this on my list because I think this is a very important thing to also, especially research more about this, because I do think that there were that there is, has to be some attention for those groups, especially if you have only 1 year left, and it would be such a shame for your education and your money already spent on education that you will have to end it like that. So this is for me something I'm going to research about, because for me this is, when you say it like this is a very important question. So this is two, and we for you, if you have more like questions like this, we can make a Q&A of stuff like this. I prefer to have too many questions, and that we say, well, we have to skip a few, but we take the big questions for a good Q&A, and we can research that, because well, it's kind of your future. So for me, it's important to have most trustworthy information.
Yeah. And again, there's quite a few very specific questions in the Q&A as well. For those, as mentioned, really do make an appointment with the digital consultation hours, or with our digital consultants through Refugee Help. They'll be better able to assist you with those specific questions. You mentioned that if you get an asylum permit, that the years that you have been in the Netherlands under temporary protection do not count towards your stay in the Netherlands and towards an eventual permanent residence. Does that also go for people who switch from temporary protection to a work permit or a partner visa?
Well, the first, because your question is, I separate in multiple parts. At first, that what I said about the years not counting is solely meant for people who now reply for asylum. So they start a new procedure, and it's based on their procedure during time. So it's based on when you go to Ter Apel tomorrow, then the officials see that as a new request, and asylum request. There are time periods where the first decision has to be made and the first interview has to be done, etc. So it's based on that. So they start counting on the moment you apply for your asylum. And for example, right now, and there's a lot of things happening in the asylum political landscape. So I only can talk about the current situation. That you have first you have a 5-year permit, but it also only counts from the moment on, and after that 5 years you have to ask for another years, and then for example you when you can ask for Dutch citizenship, etc. All those steps when that can happen is all based from the moment on you ask for asylum in Ter Apel new. So that is based on that. So I'm not sure in which things, for example, work or study permit is the time period is relevant. So for me, that's why I'm thinking about. That's why I had to explain. For asylum, it's important because the time period of decision of the process. But I don't know for the work visa and the study visa has anything to do with that time period. But that's also, we are Dutch Council of Refugees. Our expertise is not with study and work visa. So this is, otherwise I would be guessing.
Yes. So a few questions from people who have not received a letter from the IND. And are wondering what they need to do to get clarity about their situation?
Well, this is a very good question. Also, sometimes it's easy. Most easy is to call to the IND because maybe you moved, maybe your address is wrong in the system or something. Or, for example, you lived first at in a guest house of a private person, then you move to another one, just to be sure that the ID has the correct address of you. Because as I understood that the IND has sent out all their letters, and maybe something went wrong, or maybe they have the wrong address. Better be safe than sorry. It's never. You can always call to the IND and ask them. I want to inform if what is the status of this? Of did you send me that letter?
Yeah. I'm searching through the questions to see if there are any others left. Most of them have been addressed, and a lot of the ones remaining are again very specific situations where it's better to speak directly with a consultant and get some get the specifics of your situation right before you get the answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, I can also tell you that within a few weeks, also there's more information available at municipalities. So we planned this because we thought it's important for you to all have the general information. And maybe, for example, that question about that study is, I know the ministry is working on a Q&A and more information about your situation, which is going to be sent to the municipalities. So again, it's talk with the municipality, as also inform your municipality, tell them about your situation. For example, if you say, I have a study permit, but I'm afraid I have no housing, inform them, because maybe they can also help you to think about your situation. Also, for example, if you're afraid for housing, talk about that with your educational system too, with your education counselor. Maybe there are some student housing available. It's don't make it only your own problem. Just talk to people. Maybe there are more options than you know of.
Yeah, I think all the questions that we haven't gotten to are in the category very specific. So we're going to leave those. There are a few questions about the reasons behind these decisions. Why are Ukrainian nationals being treated different than people with other nationalities? Why can't the Netherlands just allow people to stay? All very understandable questions, but not questions that we can address here.
Yeah, but I do understand your sentiment because I think it is important that you at least feel seen with that question. It's also kind of the European thing because every European country at the beginning interpret the temporary protection in their own way, and at some point, the Netherlands had the feeling that the balance of Ukrainian and non-Ukrainian was kind of, they say, is it still correct if we look at it at other countries? So it is a very political issue, and I do understand your sentiment because a lot of you, I heard stories for people who lived for, well, more than 10 years in the Ukraine. So you maybe feel more Ukraine as you feel as, I don't know, that person came from Kazakhstan as well, as I remember. So I do understand that it's tough, it's rough, and sometimes it's hard to get over because maybe you have only friends in Ukraine and you came with friends to here. So every personal story is a bit tragic, and yeah, I wish I had an answer, and I wish I had a solution or something you can do that could work with. But I do want to say we hear your story.
Yeah, definitely. And this webinar is not uh, to defend or promote the decision made by the government. Behind the scenes, Vluchtelingenwerk does a lot of work to try and advocate for the rights of refugees and asylum seekers who are in the Netherlands or coming to the Netherlands, to try and influence government policies. But we also have a very important role to explain the rules, how they apply to individuals, and exactly what the rules are and how they will be executed. That's independent of our stance as an organization on those rules.
Yeah, I think it's important for you to, based on information, and if we like that information or not, but that you can put in your own balance based on that information, what is the best option for you?
Yeah. Like I said, there's still a lot of open questions that are better dealt with in an individual consultation. Then you can get the full attention for your specific case, and really go through the specific rules that apply in your situation. You can make an appointment on refugeehelp.nl. And that's also the website where next week you can find the recordings of this webinar if you want to look back what we have discussed here. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for your questions. That helped us clarify the matter as well as possible, we hope. Thank you, Sonia, very much for your presentation and for going through the different situations, different groups that are affected by this decision. And of course, thank you to the interpreters for interpreting all of this to Russian and Arabic. Yeah, wish you all good luck with with sorting out your right to residence in the Netherlands or elsewhere. And yeah, hopefully this has helped you get a better grasp of the situation. And if not, then again, we can help you through the consultation hours via refugeehelp.nl. Thank you and a good night to everybody.